Does drone warfare change IHL armed conflict rules? Imagine a world where war is fought from thousands of miles away, with pilots sitting comfortably in a control room instead of being on the battlefield. This is the reality of drone warfare. But does this new way of fighting change the rules that govern armed conflict? To answer that, we need to look at the foundations of international humanitarian law, which includes the Geneva Conventions and other treaties. These laws set the rules for how wars are fought, focusing on protecting civilians and limiting unnecessary suffering. They emphasize principles like distinction, which means separating combatants from civilians, and proportionality, which prevents excessive harm to civilians relative to the military advantage. Drones are considered a new method of delivering force, not a new category of weapon. So, the core rules of international humanitarian law still apply. Drones must be used in ways that respect the principles of distinction and proportionality. For example, military commanders need to ensure targets are legitimate military objectives and that civilian harm is minimized. However, using drones introduces some practical challenges. Because drones are operated remotely, it can be harder to accurately identify targets. Mistakes can happen, leading to civilian casualties, which raises questions about whether the principles are being properly followed. The distance also makes it easier for operators to make decisions without seeing the immediate effects, complicating assessments of proportionality. Another issue is transparency and accountability. Often, drone strikes happen in secret, and it can be unclear who is responsible for civilian harm. This lack of openness makes it difficult to ensure compliance with international law. Sovereignty is also a concern. When drones fly in another country's airspace without permission, it raises questions about respecting that nation's sovereignty. Legally, such strikes are justified only if they are in self-defense or with the consent of the country involved. There are also human rights issues. Targeted killings outside active hostilities can violate the right to life and due process. Without judicial oversight, these actions can become problematic under international human rights law. Command responsibility remains important. Military and political leaders who authorize drone strikes must ensure they follow international law. The technology does not remove their legal obligations. In summary, drone warfare does not change the fundamental rules of international humanitarian law. But it does make applying these rules more complex. Protecting civilians and respecting sovereignty become more challenging, highlighting the need for clearer international standards and oversight. The core principles of distinction, proportionality, necessity, and humanity continue to guide the conduct of hostilities, even from afar.